Hey, what's up, guys? Ronin Man here. So, are humans, as many people believe, and you see this in movies, you see it in TVs, you hear it at dinner, in conversation, very common idea these days. And I think if you look inside yourself, okay, here's the funny thing about the mind, is even if you don't believe that humans are, inherently bad for the world, it might be in your mind anyway. This is the funny thing about beliefs. They're so insidious and so complex. Our minds are so complex. And how we believe things and what ideas we have and the contradictory nature of our very ideas. And we try to make it logical, but actually it's not, right? I know that I find myself at, even though it's something that I really do not believe that humans are toxic and that they are a scourge on the earth. And I'm going to kind of explain why I think this is true. And for years I've thought about making this video, actually. I just trying to put these concepts together. So let me see if I can. It's a little bit of a first attempt here, but it's after decades of thinking. Okay, let's just unpack this idea. So what is the basic idea that is being thrust upon us by society? I would say that humans are a scourge on the earth, and the reason why is because we're not like nature. Okay, so there's all this concrete, there's all these buildings everywhere, and this is all a sign, all this concrete and everything. All this is a sign of kind of bad things. So basically, this is Thailand, right? So this should be right here where I am. It should just be a jungle and mangroves, right? But instead we have this pool, we have this concrete, and we have this man-made structure, this artificial structure, and all this is bad. So this is the concept, right? And if you look, from space, they'll show green, good, and basically man-made habitats bad. That's kind of I would say that's one of the fundamental ideas. And I think one of the more insidious ideas, which is inside of this idea, the idea that humanity is bad, is a more subtle aspect of that idea, is that there are better and worse people. Okay, so basically the concept is man no good, animals good. So the birds, you can hear the birds, those are good, right? And the monkeys, they're good, right? And then the humans, no good. That's basically the jump, right? So the humans, no good. And it's funny because it's really a poorly thought out idea in my mind. So that's why I want to attack it directly. I just don't believe it. I really, really, really don't believe it. And I think that it's very bad for you to believe it. Even partly in your mind. I just don't think it's a very negative idea. Very, very negative idea. And I don't think I've never heard it taken on. So I'm going to try to take it on here. Okay, so what are humans? I think one of the concepts in this idea is that humans are somewhat, it's funny because you wouldn't think it's true, but in this concept is that humans are kind of separate from animals, right? Isn't that kind of part of the idea? Don't you think so? Is like man is not an animal. That's kind of an idea because animals are good, right? And humans are bad. So we're not really, in this concept, we're not really animals. Wouldn't you agree with that? There's something fundamental about us that is not animal in this concept, which is funny because if you ask most people that believe men are bad or humanity's bad, I should say man because it's kind of basically the same thing, right? That's kind of what they're saying. But the idea that man is bad is that man is not an animal. Man is fundamentally different than an animal. Animals are good because they're very, they eat leaves and stuff, and they forget they eat other animals. We try to ignore that, but they eat leaves and they climb around trees and they dig in the dirt, and that's good. And I guess an animal that's capable of changing the environment, creating things bigger, is bad. Now, I would say in this concept of good animals is that somehow a pretty smart animal is still good. So, for example, a beaver that makes a dam. I think the beaver is a bit sketchy, in these guys' ideas. Because if you actually say, hey, beavers make dams, right? And humans make dams, right? And that's kind of not good, right? So I wonder how good a beaver is. I guess a beaver is a bit sketchy here in this concept, Oh, this is funny to unpack it. This is hilarious, actually. This is hilarious. Okay, so beaver's kind of good, kind of bad, because it's messing with nature. Because I guess the other idea is, there's a lot of ideas in this, so let me, give me a little slack here. Is that the earth was good before man came, right? So when you look at the planet and it was all green, that was good, right? And then now that there are cities and concrete and internet and stuff, satellites and stuff, that's not good. These are kind of like pollution in this concept. They're kind of pollution on the beautiful natural earth, right? That's kind of the idea. If you don't think this is in your mind, if you don't think this affects you, you're crazy, man. This is every movie, every kid's movie, so many nature documentaries, and I think it resonates with people. Like there's something in it that says, even in me, it says, hey, nature is good. I mean, there's no doubt that fucking nature is awesome, right? I mean, nature is just totally awesome. And a strip mall is pretty dismal. You know what I mean? Like, would you rather be walking in a beautiful jungle here in Thailand, in northern Thailand? You know what I mean? Or like a strip mall with a check cashing building, right? So I do understand the kind of the precept, the kernel, the beginning, of the genesis of this idea. So I think it's important to unpack it, because only by fully unpacking it and admitting, some things are true, like which do you prefer, concrete or grass, right? Like it's just, grass is beautiful, and trees are beautiful, and green is beautiful, and there's no doubt about that. Like this one thing I love about this building is that we're up on the 8th floor, but they have like tons of plants, and every morning there's a girl who comes here and she waters all these plants, and it's quite nice, to watching her water the plants. She's actually the girl that does it. She's older, but she's very feminine. She loves. You can tell this is like her favorite job. She loves watering the plants. I can really relate to her. I love to watch her. Actually, I'm up here in the morning. There's nobody out here, and it's just me and her, and I get to watch her water the plants. It's quite nice. I'll sit here, and I'll be thinking, I'll be swimming and whatever, and I'll just kind of watch her take care of the plants. I think it's a nice feminine thing. I know a lot of girls, they want to work in flower shops in Japan. It's quite very common for young girls to want to work in flower shops, because there's something about that, right? It matches with femininity, with natural femininity, which is a good thing, And so nature is good. Now, where does man fit in? Where does man fit in? Okay, so what I think, I've never heard before, I think that basically you really have to think about this logically to kind of get it, because emotionally this all makes sense. Man is bad. It does make sense emotionally, because you look at this and you say, hey, wasn't it better before, right? And then that starts the process, right? What is man? Let's break that down. What is man? Okay, man is essentially, now this depends on obviously your background, your religion. Now I'm not religious, so let me break this down my way. And there are beneficial concepts to everybody's way of thinking. So even if you're, stoutly religious for any religion, there are benefits to thinking about stuff. Okay, and here's just to break it down the way I look at it. Okay, so life started on the planet very simple. Okay, as a simple organisms, and you can see, and then they were challenged, those organisms, and they evolved, and you can see this, like when you take the reason why you don't want to take antibiotics when you're not sick. Here in Thailand, it's terrible. They hand out antibiotics so easily. You can just go to the doctor and order, hey, give me some whatever, penicillin, whatever it is, not penicillin, sorry, but some antibiotics. You can get antibiotics without seeing a doctor. So what a lot of guys do, and it's really stupid, is they take antibiotics like once a year, just because they might have something. And what they don't understand is that the body evolves. So when you take antibiotics, your body's not the same as before. Your body has fundamentally changed, and if you have a car accident and you need antibiotics, they don't work the same way, because your body evolves and adjusts and adapts every time you take them. That's why you don't want to take drugs unnecessarily. You don't want to take antibiotics when you don't need them, because it's going to affect your body. It's going to alter your body. So what you want to do is you want to avoid antibiotics until you need them. And that way, when you have a car accident and you need surgery and you have an infection and there's different, whatever it is, different complications, is that the antibiotics will all work for you. If you take them when you're not sick, or if you do get sick a lot and you have to take a lot, like one time when I had a surgery and I had complications, I had to take a bunch of different antibiotics, and I ended up having to take penicillin in the end. I talked about that in one of my episodes, and that was a scary thing, because I knew that I was getting towards the end. I was getting towards, I was using up all the antibiotics I could use, and I was getting to penicillin, right, which is an old school one, right? Getting rid of infections and so you don't want to do that. You don't want to tax those. You want to have that reservoir ready. That is evolution. Your body is evolving and changing, and you can see it in evolution of behavior, right? If just a very simple one, but let's say I put a wall up over there, so you can't walk that way. People will walk this way to come over here, right? It's just like we see a block and then we change. That's how life is. We go one way, but then we can't do it anymore. We go the other way. That's the same with our cells. It's the same with animals. It's the same with everything. We adjust, right? We adjust to complications. We overcome, and we find ways. We find ways of doing it. And so, life evolved from very simple organisms, and eventually got more and more complex, and it became organisms, and simple organisms and more complex organisms, and then the more complex features like the eyes and things like that evolved, starting from very simple, light and dark animals that could see the difference between light and dark. They survived. They didn't get eaten, and so then that slowly over time, and you can read about the evolution of the eye is one of the most interesting things. I think in evolution is the evolution of the eye. I don't know why, I just find that so fascinating. Is how an eye could evolve. Because when I was young, I was religious, and I just couldn't understand. Like, it just didn't make sense. How could the eye evolve? Like, the eye had to be created in my mind, And how the eye evolved teaches you a lot about evolution. It's very, very fascinating and very complex, and simple at the same time. So back to man. What is man? Essentially, man, is not that different from these plants right here. This is life, These are a version of life. And this is fundamentally different from non-life, So like this concrete here, you can leave this concrete anywhere, on another planet, put it on Mars or whatever. It's not going to change. It's never going to evolve. This concrete will never evolve. It will never become better concrete. It's just not going to change. If you put the concrete over there, it's not going to go around the wall. You can't walk, right? It just sits there. Right? Rocks, they don't evolve. And sand doesn't evolve. It's not. It doesn't have DNA. It's not life. And life evolves, right? So plants and humans are connected. We are connected. That's why you don't see any plants on Mars, right? You don't see any plants because there's very little, it's very difficult to find life outside of the Earth. Now, actually they have found life in space. There is tons and tons of microorganisms up in space. And this was a big surprise to scientists, is way up there are microorganisms. And so those things are floating around up there, and they are alive. And so those things are, you know, they're landing on the Earth, they're flying back up there. I guess wind, I don't know if wind takes them up there or whatever it is. But either way, there's a lot of organisms, and this is what NASA and the Chinese space program, they worry about, is because they worry that there's going to be some kind of organism up there that they're going to take down to Earth, and it won't be good for the planet because we won't have evolved for that yet, right? Evolution is a very painful process. It's a very painful process. I'll give you one example. When the Europeans first came to the Americas, okay, the Europeans were the first ones to domesticate animals. So they were the first ones to have cattle and lambs and lamb and things like that around their house, right? Dogs, you know, they domesticated animals. And the Egyptians were the first to farm. And the Europeans were first to have animals, domesticate animals, so have them in the house, have them around, not just wandering around wild. Now, those animals had different bacteria and diseases, and so a lot of Europeans died from those diseases. Now, this is before, essentially, written history, so we don't hear about it because there's so much history that happened before written history, and this is what people don't understand. History is billions of years old, and we didn't have paper, internet back then, and video cameras, and so a lot of this stuff you have to use your brain and think about for a second. Okay, so Europeans had domesticated animals. They saw benefit in that. Now, with those animals came diseases, and they died of those diseases. So Europeans got wiped out by diseases time and time again that were from the animals. And eventually, there were surviving people, okay? Obviously, Black Death is one of the biggest ones, but they traced the DNA back to China and the Silk Road. The Black Death was a disease from China that arrived probably in a package, probably in some kind of export from China, and it killed off most of Europe. It was a huge disaster. But it wasn't a disaster, not really, because it was just evolution. It was something that had happened many times before. But the difference is the Black Death was fairly recent, so we know about it. So it's like, oh, big disaster. What people don't realize is tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of these things happened before. You know, just what we would consider now terrible disasters happened in order for us to have survived and have evolved to be tougher, to be more resilient, and to be, you know, come from this essentially, right? So to become humans. And so when the settlers went to the Americas, those were there's so much talk, I just can't stand this. There's so much talk about how the settlers put some kind of disease in blankets, and those blankets, it was like a deliberate attempt to wipe out the Indians. Now, I have no idea. Humans can be very malevolent. Indians can be malevolent, by the way. Americans be malevolent. Europeans can be malevolent. Africans be malevolent. Chinese can be malevolent. Humans can be fucking malevolent, okay? This is a characteristic, and it's one of the things that you need to watch yourself even, to make sure that you are not being malevolent, right? You are not fundamentally good. You are fundamentally a human being, and that means a package of good and bad and complex motivations. So we need to watch ourselves. So the idea was that Europeans, the few settlers that went there, they were very sophisticated apparently, and they knew how to put diseases in blankets. Now, I don't know how to do that, so I don't know. I guess coughing on the blankets, I don't know. But either way, the concept was, what I see that as, okay, it's so clear to me, is what they were doing, what they're trying to do with history, is they're trying to paint a disease as malevolence, which is just simply not the way diseases work. The diseases that wiped out the Indians, okay, that killed so many Indians, and we know about this because this is recent, okay, this is in the last 300 years. We see the effects of these diseases on the Indians, and we saw a great decline in population because of these diseases. What we don't see is the people that were immune to those diseases, which were the Europeans. They had the exact same experience. Okay, they got wiped out. It doesn't matter if somebody put it in a blanket or it just came from nature, from their kids coughing, right? Humans, Europeans, whoever was there, they died from these diseases before the Indians did. They got wiped out. Now, we don't have a record of that, but we know that's the way it operates. That's the way diseases operates, is they basically will infect the population, right, until there is somebody who is immune to that disease. That person lives. Nobody understands why. They're just immune for whatever reason. It could be a genetic defect originally, some form of defect which causes them to be immune to that particular disease. Those people are still cruising around. Well, those people have sex and they have kids, and those kids tend to have that same aspect of their DNA. Not always, but because we carry what is it? I can't even think of the word. Submissive regressive genes, and we also have. So basically, you could have blue eyes if you're brown-eyed. You could have, you carry regressive genes in you, and so children don't always have that aspect of their parents, but there's a much more likelihood that they will. So a tall parent will tend to have a tall kid. There are definitely times when that's not true, but generally that's going to be the case. So that will create eventually a population of people who are immune to that disease. That's what happened, and that's what happened with the Indians too. They got wiped out, but they're still there. Why are they still there? Because some of them were immune, and those Indians had children, and that's how it works. That's how it works. So this is evolution. It's evolution in progress. It's not good or bad. It's just the way it works. It is just the way it works. But see, now in modern society, we kind of can't handle evolution anymore. It's too harsh for us. So we don't want this to keep happening, basically. And I understand that. I understand not wanting evolution to happen. I mean, I do understand that. Like, I would never want my daughter to go through a disease just because she wasn't immune to it. You know what I mean? I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that she survives. You know what I mean? So I understand that. This is a natural desire in humans. And so it's kind of a mix. Like, it's kind of like if you grow up in the hood, you become very tough and you can take care of yourself. If you grow up in a tough environment, a trailer park, you can fight, right? And if you grow up in, like, say, a very protected environment, you can't fight, and that could cause you to get killed. You could be in a bad situation one night, and the kid that knows how to fight because he grew up in a tough environment, he's the kid who survives the drunken brawl, right? He's got the street smarts, and the other kid doesn't. So, I mean, there's good and bad at going through tough things, definitely, and so okay, but we're conflicted about this idea in modern society. Okay, so back to humans. So what are humans? They are basically, what are humans essentially? I tell you, this idea that humans are bad is so fundamentally messed up to me. Because what I'm telling you, all this stuff I'm telling you, it all leads into this, is that humans are just basically the best plants. That's what we are. We're the best. We are the peak of intelligence, and we have the most, flexibility. We have adapted the best defenses, the best offenses, the best way to protect ourselves over other life forms. And that's why we proliferate. We didn't have what you would think we need. You would think that we would need, big teeth or, like huge claws or something. You would think that, a lot of people would think that that would be, the king of the jungle is the lion. But the king of the jungle is not the lion. The king of the jungle is man. And man wins every time. And, man can put a lion in a cage very, very easily. Can shoot a lion. Man can encircle a lion. Men can, it just goes on. This is why we proliferate. And it's exactly the same, okay? I want to put this in a concept that just take it away from the moral, good and bad, right and wrong. I want to just put it into things that people can understand. So let's look down at the plants here. So we have grass down there, okay? And we have trees here, okay? And bushes and trees. Now, this is right here. This looks like just like plants and, it looks like, just a normal garden. But actually, this is a vicious battlefield. Right here. Vicious battlefield. Okay, so these plants here, that grass down there, it is fighting with these plants. It is essentially a fucking enemy. That grass is a fucking enemy of that plant, of that bush. And that bush is a fucking enemy of that tree. Why? Because they're both fighting for sunlight. Okay, so sunlight is one of the main nutrients for plants. Okay, we also have minerals in the ground and water. But these are vicious. This is a vicious fight for survival right here in the garden. And so this plant here is blocking the sunlight down there. Now, of course, there's a wall here too, but this is, you can see the concept. Is that the shorter plants down there, right? Where's my finger there? The shorter plants down there, they are fighting with these bigger plants for sunlight. And it's a vicious battle because which is better? Sometimes the taller plant is better, okay? Because he can go above all the other plants and get that sunlight. He can drink in that sunlight, right? And then down there, they're down there, and so that you would think the grass would always lose, there'd be no grass in the world. Why does grass win? Grass wins, I would guess, because it covers a larger area. So you can have grass like all over the place. So you might have a tree here, and you might tend to see down there bare spots underneath the tree, okay? But the trees aren't everywhere. So, another area is going to be all, somewhere else is going to be all grass, right? And the grass just quickly spreads to areas where it can take in that sunlight. And this is how the world works. It's actually quite a brutal situation, even with these plants right here. Okay, now, but somehow this idea that man is bad I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of life itself. It really is. It's a fundamental misunderstanding. It's a poorly thought out misunderstanding, because if man is bad, okay, if man is essentially a scourge on the earth, okay, and everything man creates is poison and pollution, okay, what is man? Man is a form of life, and it is in many ways the fundamental winner in the battle for resources, okay? So just like this tree here is a winner often over that bush, and that bush is a winner over other bushes, okay? It might be a winner. This bush might be a winner for many reasons. Like it might be this bush. There's many reasons why a plant could be a winner. It might be because there's so many flowers, and those flowers are budding and spreading. And a plant that has less flowers would have less likelihood to proliferate, right? There could be many reasons. There could be many reasons why a plant would win. But what we're doing when we say man is bad, okay, what we're saying is we are essentially saying that, I mean, really, we're saying that loser plants and loser life is good. So plants that don't survive, so this is a big bad plant here, right? Because he's a winner. He's evolved billions of years. This plant beat, okay? This plant beat many other fucking bushes, okay? This evil plant here, right? Let's get a close up here. This terrible, terrible plant is terrible. I mean, just think of all the death and destruction for the other plants. Right? This fucking patriarchal evil plant here, unbelievably evil, has beaten and given, death sentence to these other plants. And that is true. That is very, very true. That's why it's here. It has survived evolution just like we have. And it was a tough go, man. It was a tough go. And you'd have to get a biologist to explain why this particular plant, we can guess, like I just guessed with the flowers, we could guess why a plant would survive. There's other reasons why a plant would survive. One is height, because they basically block out the sun, right? Another reason is the width of the leaf. So if the leaf is super wide, it's going to take in more sun, right? And if the weed is long and basically the surface area is large, it will block sunlight. So behind the leaf, right, is shade. So that right there is a sign that that leaf is a winner, right? And you can see that they're trying, the leaf is trying, okay, its very best to get as much energy as possible. And essentially to rob energy of not only the other plants, but even like to rob energy from other leaves. So one leaf can block another leaf, So this leaf is competing against this leaf, right? So it goes all the way down to the very small aspects of a plant or animal, is that even on the same bush, leaves are competing for sunlight, and they're also, I would suspect that they're also, in fact I wouldn't suspect, I'm sure, that they are competing down in the ground, they're competing for the other nutrients that are in the earth, right? There's a competition. There is a competition, always a competition, and there are winners and there are losers, and that is the way it is in plants. Now, and plants are life, so we are kind of plants, okay? We are like the best plants, basically. Right? We are a form of life. These are a form of life. This is the beginning of life. Is simple organisms, okay? And these plants, they flower, and if you look at the Cambrian explosion, which was when the Cambrian explosion is when all these flowers and colors appeared on the earth. And it's a very interesting period to read about. And at least it's worth watching a short video on the Cambrian explosion. And what they think is that the flowers and the colors all exploded at the same time that eyes developed. So there was a reason now, okay? There was an advantage. And then these flowers just exploded, and the colors, so this, in other words, this fundamental competition creates beautiful things. It really is. I gotta say, like, life and plants and evolution is probably the most, I would say it's one of the most interesting things that we have to think about. And it's so great because no matter how deep you study it, there's more to learn. There's always more to learn. And it's a very, very interesting thing. And it's not a fake Disney movie. It's not made up by some, Hollywood mogul, right? It's right here. It's right here. It's not some fake thing. There is no message in plants. There is no message in the sun and the earth. It's just something to understand for intelligent people. And that's what's so beautiful about it. I really love to learn, and to learn about things that are real, that affect me. They're so fucking fascinating. It's like no matter what your job is, you can really enjoy learning about yourself, about the world, about life, about how things work, how the world works, how you work, right? So now, if this plant, again, we have here another patriarchal evil plant, because it takes a lot of sunlight, right? It blocks. Now look down there, there's probably some plants down on the bottom that it's just, brutally fucking over, right? Like here's the plant down there. That fucking plant just getting fucked in the ass by this plant here, which is just evil. Like it's reaching up and getting the sunlight, and you can see it's just going above the wall here. Well, the sun's moving, obviously, but it is reaching out to get as much as it can get. That is what this plant is doing. And I want to say one thing, and I've said it before, but this is like one of my most fundamental concepts. Ronin Man, one of my most fundamental concepts, is that people ask me, what do you want to do? What is your goal? What is your philosophy? My philosophy is fucking simple. I want to be, I am a living being, okay, like this plant. Now, what I want to do, now I have genetic characteristics, okay, and I have limitations, okay, I can't fly, there's a lot of things I can't do, but what I want to do with what I have, just like this plant here, this plant, you know, he can't walk or talk, he can't speak Japanese, or he can't use a computer, this plant, but what he can do is he can grow. And so what I think our goal as people is, and my goal certainly is to grow as high as I can. It is to grow and get as much sunlight and to grow as healthy and as tall as I possibly can until I get so high that I can't go any higher. And there's no fault in that. This plant is not bad because he's not as tall as the building, right? You know, he's going as high as he can. I think it's such a fundamental, simple idea. But I think your prerogative, your not prerogative, it's you know, as a man, you have to admit, you have to accept your limitations. You can't do everything, right? You can't, you know what I mean? You have to accept your limitations. And other humans won't have those. They'll have other aspects to themselves. They'll be taller. They can get a rebound over you. You know, they might be faster than you. They might be smarter than you. They might be more flexible than you. They might have better eyesight, right? There's things that, you know, like I know when I was a kid, one of my good friends, one of his, like, the bane of his life, like, just drove him insane, is that he wanted to be a pilot so bad. My friend I grew up with, he wanted to be a fucking pilot, and he could not be a pilot because his eyes were not good enough. And it just drove him crazy. I remember when we were little kids, he used to talk about it all the time. It's like he was like, this was his, like, it was like the worst thing for him, because he couldn't get over the idea that he had to be a pilot, and that pilots were good. And that they were, like, I don't know, manly or whatever it was that he thought he should be. But his eyes were no good. And so he could not be a pilot, because at the time, I'm sure it's still this way, but now with surgery, I'm sure it's changing. But it was a clear thing. They gave you an eye test, and if you didn't pass to a certain level, you could not be a fucking pilot. And so my friend could not be a pilot. It just was not possible. You could not join the military to become a pilot. You could become a Cessna pilot or whatever, but he wanted to be like a cool pilot, right? Which is basically, he wanted to fly fighter jets, and then he wanted to, you know, be a big war hero, and then he wanted to retire, and then, you know, be a jumbo jet pilot, like a 747 or whatever was the big plane back then. And he wanted to be, like, you know, wearing the cool uniform, and then strutting around the airports, right? So, you know, but all that dream came crashing down because his eyes were no good. They did not pass the test, and that just drove him crazy. And I think, to me, I always saw that as a fundamental flaw he had, because he could not get over that. He just kept talking about it. I remember when he was a kid, he just kept talking about it all the time. And I just, for myself, there's many things I can't do. I just say, okay, well, fuck it. You know, I can't do those things. But no, I shouldn't say that so easily. No, I have flaws, and I have pathologies, and definitely, like, sometimes I just can't get over an idea. So either way, this was not my weakness, was not wanting to be a pilot and feeling that I was flawed or whatever. But my friend was like that, and it was interesting to watch him over the years. And I know it deeply affected him, actually. It really was a big deal for him, because I knew him from third grade until we were about almost 50 years old. So, you know, this was a big thing for him. I guarantee you that. If you find yourself, by the way, just to pass this on, if you find yourself ruminating over a limitation that you have, and just over and over and over, and you find it being a big part of your life, and a limitation is something that you want to work on, I'm just going to say this: there are ways to overcome it. There are methodologies that you can use to overcome that. but they don't happen automatically. These are fundamental things. You have to trace them back. You have to get in deep. You have to admit that you have this weakness. You can't just say, oh, I'm perfect, but I have this pathology. No, you have to admit fault. You have to admit weakness. You have to look for answers. You have to try things that don't work. You have to look like an idiot, right, sometimes. And you have to go through painful experiences. But eventually, you can overcome this type of thing. And my feeling is you should overcome. You should. Just like if there was a wall there, you should go around, right? This is life. This is evolution. You are, as a man, and I would say any life, women, men, all other lower animals or less intelligent or whatever you want to call them. Look, whatever word I choose is not perfect, okay? The English language, it's just a fucking language. I speak a lot of languages. Language is sometimes very limited, okay? All life, okay, has to evolve, has to improve. And if you find yourself in a pathology, the pathology is like, it's a form of it's just like when you just keep ruminating over and over about something. Like it could be like a painful experience or whatever. There are ways, guys, to really, really free yourself of these things. There really, really are. You can be a free man, and you can overcome those things, and you will find enormous benefit, enormous satisfaction in overcoming these difficult things, especially when you have your own pathology and you overcome it. It's just like amazing because it gives you like a satisfaction when you see that you had a weakness, right? And it was difficult, and then you challenged it, and then you said fuck it, and then you found a way to overcome it. It's beautiful. It is fucking beautiful. Okay, so back to man. So if life is all connected, okay, and if there is nothing inherently evil about the competition for resources, right? There's no, I don't know, like, if man is evil, okay, if man is a scourge on the planet, then you would definitely say that winter plants are also a scourge on the planet. They have to be. They beat out these other plants, okay? And I'm going to add in the complexities, which I will. I also understand this idea, okay? There is truth to it, okay? For example, there's a carp, there's a I forget what I think it's called the Asian, is it Asian carp? Either way, there's a fish that is a very successful predator that was introduced, it's a flying fish, to some rivers in America. And it has grown and overtaken so many other, it's very voracious, just eats. And it's just like it's a very successful fish, okay? And it just takes over any lake you put it in. And so, those fish got to those lakes because they're fun to catch. And so some people brought them over from Asia, put them in the lakes, and they just took over. They just ate all the other fish, right? And there's even videos you can see online of these fish that have just infested these lakes. And the guys are driving their boat through there, and the fish are like literally flying in the air and hitting them in the face. There's so many. They just like absolutely it's just like frothing with these fish. And they kill all the smaller fish. And so I understand the concept of not liking that. I understand that. I don't want my garden, if let's say I plant a ton of different plants, I don't want one plant just to take over. And so I'm going to actively kill that very successful plant and then limit it so it's just clean. Like the girl comes in every day and she prunes this plant. She doesn't prune every day, she waters every day, but she comes in once in a while, she prunes all these plants. And she makes sure, when she prunes it, she makes sure that these other plants down here get some sunlight too, right? So she'll cut off some branches there, and that way this plant here can survive. So I understand the concept of wanting to control nature, but essentially, okay, now here's the funny thing, is that people that say humans are a scourge on the planet, and that winter plants are winners and they're terrible, they're evil, they're patriarchal, right? essentially. And they need to be put down. They need to be taken down. They don't realize, this is the funny thing about this whole concept, is they don't realize that what they're doing is contradictory. Okay, so let's say that I come in here and I cut off that branch. Now the reason why is because it's blocking the sunlight there. So this plant is dying because of this branch that was here. So I cut that off, right? And then now this plant has sunlight. So, and I'm saying, like, you know, fuck this patriarchal plant here, you know, this evil plant blocking this very, very good and very generous and lovely plant here, right? So now by doing that, what am I doing? What am I doing? I am smarter than these plants, right? They can't cut my branches off, right? They're not capable. So I have not only smarter, but I have more capacity, right? I can move around, right? If someone tries to cut off my arm, I'm gonna move. I'm not gonna let him cut off my arm so easily, right? And whereas the plant just sits here, right? He doesn't have the ability to walk away or take the elevator, you know, or take an airplane or make an airplane. This plant just sits here, so he's a sitting duck for me to cut off his branch, right? So when I control nature, in order to make it more kind, what I'm doing is I'm expressing intelligence as man. So I'm fundamentally, like, I'm saying that this should not block this, you know, and I know that, and I'm intelligent, and like, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is right. By doing that, by me doing that, okay, I'm saying that intelligent life can make things kind of fair, but then this is just the beginning of changing the world. Okay, this cutting off that branch to block that, this is the beginning of airplanes and concrete. It's the beginning, because it is saying, hey, things are not the way they should be. I'm going to move them around. I'm going to fix them, right? Because concrete, like, for example, a lot of people think concrete was just, people today, they just don't think. But they think that concrete is just an evil thing, and just, it's just men make it. It's so terrible. And, you know, they don't realize that what concrete was made for. It was made for doing things. So one of the original things that concrete was used for is flooding. So like in China, you had over the millennia in China, one of the biggest problems is flooding. The Yangtze River flooded and killed people over the decades, and this is why you see the Communist Party making so many projects like the One Belt One Road. I think it all goes back to the control of nature. The Chinese really learned they had to control nature, because if they didn't, it was going to take its revenge on humanity, and once in a while, right? So the Chinese really like to control nature, and you look at a Chinese garden, the symmetry of a garden, and also the Japanese aspect. You know, Chinese people went to Japan and became Japanese people like 2,000 years ago, right? So you see Japanese gardens, there's a lot of connections with the Chinese garden. And you look at cities like Xi'an, which is almost an exact replica of Kyoto structure, right? So you see the connection there. But one of the things about Asia that's very interesting is they love to control nature. I'm telling you, they fucking love it. And it's kind of funny, because in the West, there's an idea that controlling nature is bad, and letting nature run wild is good, right? So like a garden that's kind of wild is good, right? In Western idea right now. Whereas the Chinese, they don't agree. And the Japanese, they love to control nature. They love to cut off branches. If you look at a bonsai tree, it's considered one of the most beautiful things. But that is a stunted tree. I mean, it's like a purebred dog, kind of. It takes a long time to make generations really, to make a good bonsai tree. Some of the bonsai trees are growing in cliffs where nobody was able to touch them, and generation after generation of, you know, amateur gardener would go up there and cut off the branches and create the beautiful, in a sense, stunted, weird growth of the tree that happens with a bonsai tree. It's not a natural thing. Bonsai trees don't grow in Asia. You know, they are created by a lot of intervention. And really, that's like a fundamental aspect of the difference between Western and Asian philosophy when it comes to nature. And this is something I've never heard anybody say, because everybody, like, I think a lot of people in the West think that the West is very controlling, and the East is very open and very Zen. It is very Zen. Zen came from Asia, but control of nature, oh, there's no comparison. Oh my gosh, I've been 30 years in Asia. I'm telling you, there is no comparison. Like my mom's gardens, the way she does her garden, and the way a Japanese woman will do her garden on my street when I was living in Japan or in China, oh man, no comparison. They got no compunction about just cutting things and moving things and killing things and making sure the garden looks exactly like the fucking way they want, right? And that is also a very, again, this is a beautiful aspect of humanity. I love Japanese gardens. One of my favorite Japanese gardens is in Shikoku, and I can't remember the name of the garden right now. I can't even remember the name of the city right now, but it's a garden that's 400, it took 400 years to make. And what's so interesting about that garden, that Japanese garden, is that generations of the same family, okay, gardeners, men, created that garden. And so what they did is I'll see if I can find the name, and what am I saying? I'll just look it up. I've been there a bunch of times. And I'll put it in the comment box below. But what's so interesting about the garden is the only garden in the world that took 400 years to make. So imagine that you are a man, okay, and you're planting things around here, right? And you are, you're a man and you're looking at planting things in this garden here. Now, every year, things change over the seasons. Those flowers, they come, they fall off, leaves fall off, move, things happen, things grow taller. And so what this garden they did over the 400 years is, you say, well, how could a garden take 400 years to make? Well, what they did is they constantly perfected it. So what they did was they said, okay, that plant there blocks this bush here. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that plant a meter this way so that that plant does not block that bush, because I want that bush, I want that bush. So, and I want that plant. So I want that bush, that tree. So I want both those things. So I'm going to move them, right? So they would dig them up and they would move them over. Then the next year, they would watch the thing flower and things grow. And they would say, wait a second, you know, this is green, that's green, that's green, that's green. They'd say, you know, we need some color here. You know, so why don't we put a red plant, you know, here, right? Let's put a red plant here. Let's put a white plant there. And then we'll put a purple plant there. And so they try colors, right? And then they watch them bloom as they bloom. So this one blooms, this one blooms. And then they say, okay, well, you know, we need more white. I think we should have red, 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 and then white, white in the middle, right? So they would do that. They would look at the colors every year. They would watch things flower, and they would say, you know, this needs to be moved, this needs to be added, and they would add things. Now, the Japanese garden is even more interesting because they not only do all this, everything in the Japanese garden has meaning. So stones have meaning. A big stone usually means God, like that stone down there. You know, like a bigger stone generally means some kind of God, right? And there's all these meanings. I translated a master's thesis on Japanese gardens once, and it was the most interesting thing. I started out as just a job that I had. Like I got this job to help this girl translate her master's thesis, and it was interesting. But as I started to, at first I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be really boring. As I read it, and as I got into it, I was like, holy shit, this is like super interesting. And I learned a ton about Japanese gardens, and I've never been the same about gardens since I translated that document. Yeah, I really appreciate gardens now because I can see so much in them, you know. But back to the 400-year garden is what it is that garden. When you go to that garden, and let's say you put a chair there, okay, metaphorically, because obviously you can't stay there. but let's just say you could, and you could sit there year round and just watch the garden unfold. It's like a computer graphic. It's like red, white, green, brown, white on the ground, and then red above. It is really like a computer graphic, that garden. And it's kind of the ultimate, to me, it's the ultimate in Asian gardens, because it is 400 years. 400 years! Think about that. It's twice the age of America. 400 years! Okay, this is a fact. A gardener would live, and back then people only lived about, 50 years the max. And then his son would be born. His son would take over. His son would watch his father every day. They had nothing to do. That was his job, being a gardener for this thing. And then the father would pass away, and then the son would take over, and the son would move things around and look at things, and then he would die, and then another person would be born. And you figure like 8, 10 generations of people, the same family. And when you teach your son something, they learn it really well, right? A son that grows up learning a business, becomes very proficient very fast. Sometimes without even formal education, because he just watches his. Kids like to watch. They like to help their parents. They help mom cook. Wash dishes. Of course, it's not much help. But they like to help. They like to be involved, right? But that eventually becomes help, because the kids become very fundamentally, almost in their genetics, in their DNA, their capacity to do that profession. That's why what you teach a kid is so important, because you're teaching him really, not only you're teaching him stuff that's going to affect him, but you're not teaching him stuff that could help him. So you have to really think not about just your perspective, but you want to think much broader and much bigger when you're helping doing child development, because you want to bring things that you never had. Right? You want all the things that you want. You want to envelop all of your hopes and dreams, and you want to do everything you can to bring the best life that you possibly can for that kid. And that's what it's all about. But back to the gardeners. So that is the control. In a sense, that's the patriarchy. But what's funny about the common theme these days is that would be good. Like that Japanese garden, people would look at it, they wouldn't understand that it actually is a kind of a very controlled type of, essentially patriarchy type of garden, right? But that is a beautiful thing, and everybody loves this garden. So both things are true, both things are accurate. Nature is beautiful, and controlling nature is beautiful. So this is where we're left, and this is the complexity of man. So is man a scourge on the planet? Man is the result of billions of years of evolution. And man is the most successful creature the world has ever known. And there might be a more advanced form of life out in the cosmos. It's very possible. So it's very difficult to say that this life is good here, the simple life, and that more advanced life is bad, because you can't really stop life. So even if you killed all man, what would happen is that plants would evolve again, fish would evolve again, monkeys would evolve, and there would be a new form of intelligent winners. There would be a winner. There always is a winner, and there always will be a winner. And man is now the winner. So is the winner bad? It is very complex. Like I said with that Asian carp, it takes over lakes. It really ruins the ecosystem of lakes. So I guess when evolution happens too fast, it's probably not so good, a little bit dangerous. But when it slowly evolves, it's good, I think. I think that's kind of what our balance is. We want to let things change, let things be natural, but at the same time, we don't want let's say there was some kind of ant which was super powerful, and he just took over the whole planet, killed all people, ate all animals, by 1,000 cuts. These absolutely like killer robotic ants just took over the world. Nobody would like that, right? So there is a I understand the aspect of wanting control, but wanting control is essentially wanting man, because who controls? The most intelligent creature controls, right? So it's all so complex, but this complexity and this love of life and this interest in life is lost on so many people in a sea of anger and hatred. And I think a lot of that is a hatred of oneself. And I think the thing is in life, you want to delve in deep and really see who you are and the fundamental contradictory aspects of you. And when you find that, you will find, I shouldn't say what you'll find. You're going to find what you're going to find. But I find beauty. I find beauty in the end. I really do. Beauty in the complexity, beauty in the dichotomy, beauty in the struggle, beauty in the winners, beauty in the losers, beauty in control, beauty in nature, beauty in our thinking. And this is to me the story that is the most interesting story on this planet. All right, guys, Ronin Man, just a little thought there. So when someone tries to put an idea in your mind that you are bad, I would say rebel against that idea, because I don't think it's well thought out. I mean, if they can explain it, okay, if they can explain it at a granular level, why man is fundamentally bad and plants are good, fine. If somebody can prove me wrong, that it's like, you can't really, these kind of ideas, it's like, but either way, like, don't let somebody who is angry, who is not thinking, put ideas, or at least let them put ideas, okay? Because you can't fight against ideas. They kind of sift in your mind as you watch TV and talk to people. But think about it. Think about it. Debate it. Debate it in your mind. Debate it with your friends. Get intelligent friends around you who are capable of debating stuff like this. And your life will change. Don't be knee-jerk angry. Don't be knee-jerk with ideas. I think man is a beautiful thing, and just like these plants are. I really do. I got to end with this. I think man is the most gorgeous creature on the planet. And at the same time, I have enormous gratitude for down at the DNA level. I just think it's so beautiful. It's so interesting to watch the complexities of inside this leaf, of how the atoms and the molecules. And so the simplicity of the structures that build life are also, to me, absolutely gorgeous. They're so beautiful. They're so interesting. They're so fascinating to me. And at the same time, is the life that's created out of those things is so interesting. And don't let yourself be labeled as evil or bad without a fight. I just don't let it happen. It is a bad thing for you. It is not good. It is not good to be just because you're a man, you're bad. Just because you're a woman, you are bad. Just because you are smart, you are bad. Because you're a winner, you are bad. Don't let that happen. This will destroy your, I think, happiness and self-confidence. And it's not true. It's not fucking true. That's the biggest problem. It's just not fucking true. And it's a very negative idea that can really undermine your capacity to be happy and enjoy life. Fuck that. At least that's my what do you call it? Judgment, right? We have judgment too, right? That's my judgment. And I know it because I've been through it. I had this idea in my mind years ago that man was bad. That concrete was bad, that anything man created was bad, that there were some men that were better than others because they were more natural, and there was other men that were not as good because they created things, that they made changes they sculpted the landscape, they sculpted the universe. But I think coming to Asia and realizing how controlling Asians were with nature, it really helped me to understand that control was not a fundamentally bad thing. It was part of the balance. And it's something that makes sense. It's something that makes sense. If one kid is stronger than the other kids that you have, and he can get all the food, you're not going to let him eat all the food and the other kids starve to death, right? You're going to control that, right? And that's it. That's it. It's not black and white. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear what you think about this kind of philosophical issue, but I don't think it's just a small thing. Thinking that you're bad and humanity's bad, fuck, this is no joke, man. Don't let somebody label you this way, especially as a man. I mean, that's insane. That is so insane. It's so insane. It's loony bin, man. It's evil. That's the closest thing I can say. You know, labeling human beings, intelligent life, as inherently evil without thinking when it's not true is just, it's just dumb. And don't do it to yourself. All right, guys, Ronin Man signing off.